Greetings and welcome everyone to another edition of the Psych Monologues. Tonight will be an interesting night. Interesting is probably an innocuous word for something that is not going to be in any way, shape, or form easy. I'm doing this podcast on the backside of a very, very, very difficult week for me and my family. So before I get into that, let me just introduce what we're heading into. And if you're listening for the very first time, my deepest apologies that you have to be introduced to this on this particular show. I recognize that I have been offline for a week. I try to do these every Sunday evening in anticipation of a week to come. And at least the subject tonight might not be all the best subjects in the world to start out a week with. But I think what hits us in life doesn't time itself just right according to what our needs are to starting out a week or whatever it might be. So anyway, let me get back to who I am. I'm Dr. Ray Mitsch, your host. You're listening to the Psych Monologues, which is a podcast that is exploring the intersection of faith, psychology, and spiritual formation. So pull up a chair, get relaxed, take some time to sit back and listen and consider some of my thoughts. I think for sure tonight's episode is the intersection of faith and life and reality in a lot of ways. So we're going to talk about the issues that hopefully matter to you, where you live, what you think, how you feel about living life with others and Jesus and even with yourself. And so just a word of explanation is heading into this. And I don't know how far in I'll be able to get, quite honestly. On Friday night at 7:44, our family said goodbye to a very loyal and loving and faithful friend to the family. I put in my Facebook post that he was the iconic male of the family, and that was Koda, our golden retriever. The fact that we had him for 16 years was a gift. It was a gift. And so I head into this with some trepidation in talking about it, because it's still very raw. But like I said, we don't get to pick our issues. We don't get to pick how life proceeds. The things that press in on us are the very things that threaten our spiritual walk and our journey. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about, which I've become intensely aware of over the last 48 hours or so, and it's something that I teach, and it's funny that I'm more or less known for the grief and loss class that I teach at CCU, and it's strange, ironic, whatever word you want to use, that the person that probably knows grief as well as anybody, and I'm sure there are people that know it better than I do, but is now experiencing it again, and it's again because a few episodes ago when I did the podcast after the death of my father-in-law, it was a farewell to the Shadowlands, and we had another one Friday night, which for whatever reason, and I'm not going to postulate or speculate on why it is that it seems so much harder to say goodbye to pets. But one of the things that caught my attention is really the nature of grief and loss, and how much it tends to open a window on the various areas of our lives that we would label as broken. And I was reminded today as we went to church and I was listening to the sermon, and I was reminded today that we experience such outrage and such sorrow, partly because the world that we live in falls so short of the image of what we know is the right one, if you will. It falls under the category. John Milton wrote a poem, and he was a English poet in, I believe, the 1600s. But he wrote a poem called Paradise Lost. And I think within our spiritual and DNA is this image of what should be, or maybe an echo of what could have been if we hadn't been so bent as humans to control the world around us and proclaim ourselves God. And that's not trying to be provocative. That's the reality of our relationships oftentimes. And so we compare that image that is seemingly buried within us about how life should be. There shouldn't be death. There shouldn't be this kind of sorrow and sense of just desolation that comes after the death of someone so dear. And I recognize that there are lots of people that might listen to this and say, come on, get off it. It's just an animal, for crying out loud. And that may be. I don't really care, because when you have somebody as a member of your family, and a pet has a way of weaseling their way in and getting into places that we wouldn't ever let a human in terms of just like I said, their loyalty and faithfulness and love and acceptance and all of those things. And so this outrage that rises up within us when we lose someone or something this dear is, I think, an image of what we lost in the original paradise that we have hope for in the one to come. And so this heartache and these tears and this, like I said, sense of just despair never was really meant to be this way, but here we are. And so one of the things that, as I thought more about this and have wrestled with my own feelings, I mean, there's this kind of damnable sense of numbness that hits you because you've experienced such deep emotions and shed so many tears. It's like there's nothing left. And at some level, it feels a little bit like you're losing the connection with what is so important and dear to you. But something that I've been thinking about is this fact of the matter, in a sense, and that is that loss opens a window on our sense of brokenness, and then it reveals again even further what our tendencies are, what our responses are to this brokenness. Now, I think we've got to clarify for a minute the fact that not all brokenness is bad. I mean, brokenness is in a lot of ways an indication of our humanity and our sinfulness and how we miss the mark all the time and what we do with that missing of the mark, and all of that is very much embedded in kind of who we are. And some brokenness is really, to embrace it is to embrace our humanity and to lean into our need. And our desires, and those desires are the longings of the same paradise that we lost. But one of the things that caught my attention is that we have oftentimes specific responses to this brokenness that once revealed, we have a tendency to deal with it in a particular way. Now, some of it can be just buttoning it up to such a point that it's really not there. And we don't think about it, and we put it away on the shelf. And unfortunately, whatever it is that we put away on the shelf has a way of leaking. And I would point you back to the second episode that I ever did with this podcast talking about Love Canal, because that has a way of leaking into our lives, the anger and like the injustice of it all and all of that, and it leaks into our lives and into our emotional water table, and it ends up hitting our relationships. And that is happening even amongst us here, is that we each have our own propensity for hiding it or hiding ourselves, because that brokenness is a source of condemnation, not a source of connection. And so we hide it, and we hide ourselves from others with it because we think it defines us. And it either reveals us or it defines us, and revealing is really pretty uncomfortable. And the follow-up strategy with that is oftentimes shaming ourselves as a result of it. And this is one of these places where you get in a position where you begin to allow yourself to feel the grief. And with Koda being part of our family, and he was part of our family during some of the most darkest times of our family that any one of the members of our family were going through. And he was this kind of rock, if you will. He was always there and always bringing some measure of joy and laughter and even comfort. And he provided the kind of comfort that a human could never provide, because it's not... The one thing about animals is it seems like they reflect the heart of God of accepting us as we are, not as we should be. And that's what they do. And they end up reflecting that, which I'll talk a little bit about later. But when we shame ourselves in the midst of all of this pain and sorrow, is that comes to the surface and a tear begins to show, or our voice gets choked up or whatever. And our temptation is to apologize for it, and apologize. And usually my response is, apologize for what? And yet, I think in some respects we apologize for the other person feeling bad for us that we feel bad, instead of that feeling bad is, feeling the sorrow, having the tears is a testimony to the importance of the person, or in this case, a pet. It's going to hurt. And oftentimes we've gotten these messages when we were younger that, okay, you got hurt, so that's the way it is, and tears aren't going to make it any better, so dry it up and let's get on with it. And we apply that in these cases too, and that's with hurt that it doesn't show. It's not like anything anybody's going to see. I'm going to go through this entire week, and only a small subsection of people that know me will know that there's anything wrong. Now, some know me well enough to see it in my face, and the weariness of grief even that comes with it. But we shame it. We say, if I was stronger, I wouldn't feel this way, or if I was better, I would be able to do it so that nobody noticed. And yet, at some level, I think we long to have somebody notice the importance of whoever this was that we lost. So we hide it, we hide ourselves, we hide it, we shame it, we contain it, we condemn it, And with that, we lose our connection with others, which seems like a minor inconvenience in some respects, but yet it's about the only thing that we could possibly need at that time, because it's connection that we lost with the person or object, animal in this case, that we lost. But there's also this other thing that tends to get my teeth grinding, and that's what I call the butt syndrome. And that what the butt syndrome means is that I'm broken but hopeful, or I'm broken but my eyes are on the future. I'm broken but I'm being redeemed. I'm broken but, and it seems like we insert this so that the other person doesn't feel compelled to say anything, or doesn't feel compelled to correct us, or doesn't feel compelled to throw some platitude at us, or whatever it is. And so we get it all nicely buttoned up, and then the other person we're talking to, or people that we're talking to, don't get overly concerned about how bad it feels. Now, the fact of the matter remains is that if they were able to read between the lines and see the true nature of what we're experiencing and reached out to us, then we probably, and see, this whole thing is surrounded by these phrases we tend to have of, I'm sorry for falling apart, or losing control, or melting down, or losing it, whatever it is, as if there's something fundamentally wrong with it. And the reality is that we are so far away from the it that's really important in us that when our tears begin to show and the reality of the importance of the person or thing that was in our lives that we've lost shows, we're actually reclaiming parts of ourselves that we've condemned when we shame it and condemn it. And see, I think the thing that we've missed is perhaps considering that I can be broken and something else, instead of broken but something else. And because I am, this is not news that I'm broken, that I feel this way. I mean, like I said, some brokenness is not bad. It's not bad because we embrace it as the reality of what we're living in, a broken universe, or broken people, broken relationships, lost relationships. It's not bad. It's not good. But it's not bad either. And really, if we stay close to our humanness, we'll stay close to our need for being connected. And oftentimes the connection is the very thing that we're trying to hedge our bets against, because the deeper we are connected, the more deeply we're connected, the more it hurts when we're disconnected, which is exactly what we all felt when we said goodbye to Koda on Friday night. So what about broken and the thing that I've been thinking about since this morning even was something that Peter said in 1 Peter when he's talking about Jesus going through all the heartache and all the hurt and being reviled and beaten and everything else. And there was something in the verse there, it's at the end of 2 Peter, 1 Peter 2, that there's something there that just kind of grabbed me, and that was entrusting himself to the God that he knew, that he would judge all things in that context. But the thing that jumped out at me was entrusting. And, you know, we talk about faith, we talk about, you know, a lot of things relevant to our spiritual journey, but trust is one of those things that we give out either very glibly and gullibly, and then wonder why we get so hurt, partly because we don't evaluate the people that we're giving it out to, or we give it out very, very sparingly because we've gotten burned before, burned being losses, by humans, and some of that is because humans are not reliable. Our expectations are not calibrated against how humans really are, our expectations are calibrated against magical thinking that we call hope about how they should be. And that's part of it. So what I would propose is that it's broken and trusting that God's got it all managed. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be naive about humans and humanity and the self-pursuits that they engage in, myself included. This is all mirror stuff. But I can be broken in trusting that God has got it figured out. Even my hope that, and you read a lot of crazy stuff around animals' deaths. You read stuff about the Rainbow Bridge and all the other things, and it's all our effort to try to make certain things that aren't, because certainty allows me to be less invested in trusting. And I don't know. I don't know anything about the other side. Nobody's come back to tell us other than Jesus. And he's given us very few details on that. And I think some of it is because it's an invitation to trust his heart and his character and his love and grace that he offers us, free and clear. And yet we end up making the mistake of trusting things that can't be trusted and withholding our trust from that which is worthy of that trust. And so broken and trusting, or broken and hopeful. Not hopeful, magical thinking hopeful, but hopeful in the character of who my Abba is, your Abba is. That we know that all of creation groans. It just isn't just us under the weight of sin and broken relationship with God. All of it groans, which means the animals do too. And eventually they were domesticated, and eventually they became our pets. So one of the things that was kind of playing in my mind, and this took me way off the track of what the person who was preaching this morning was talking about, but I was reminded actually out of James, the book of James, the letter of James, Jesus' half brother, and he says in chapter 1:16, he said, "Don't be deceived," which is an interesting way to start what he's about to say. He said, "Don't be deceived, my beloved brothers." And this is, again, I know that the ice I'm running out on. And I'm not going to sit here and say, I think there's a case for this. I don't know that. I'm not going to say that. But every good gift, every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, in whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. And I would make a case for the fact that our pets are that good gift. They are part of the chorus of God's gifts that come from him. And they're a chorus of his nature. And they reflect the same kind of love and devotion and loyalty and acceptance and presence. Why do we trust our pets? Well, partly because they can't talk. They can only love us. And you could say, well, it's only because we feed them. And whatever, I'm in no mood to duke it out with anybody. But I'm reminded of something. Somebody told me about this book many years ago, and I have read it. And no, I haven't read it. I watched the movie. I know it's a shadow of what was written in the book itself, just because of the sheer detail. But something that stood out to me at the very end, because the various dogs that are talked about in that story have a voice, and they're voiced by an actor. And at the very end, he basically says, I think I finally figured out my purpose. And that is to be here now for my humans. And those three words are profoundly powerful, because is it not part of what makes our house so empty? Is the loss of that presence. And it's the very thing that gives, that we have, that we can give so freely to other people in our lives. And it's not our words. Think about it. Our pets can't talk to us. I think you could probably make a pretty good case that that's their greatest strength, because they just love us as we are, and they are here with us now. And that opens the window for inviting us to own ourselves now, to be here now with ourselves even. And they give us a safe and a sanctuary of safety that allows us to be with ourselves at that moment. And why is it so often that animals are pointed to as therapy animals, or they serve all those functions? They serve the functions of being our presence for us. And so I recognize this episode has been, I guess I don't see it as a downer at all, really. I think there's an intersection of our lives with things that are profoundly real. And I'm aware that this is one of those moments. So, if you're listening to this at the beginning of your week, I would encourage you to pay attention to the chorus of God's voices and gifts that enter into your life that we just take for granted. We know they're there. We kind of assume that they'll always be there, but the voices that say things that may be diametrically opposed to the things that we say to ourselves, and we just simply dismiss it rather than listening to it and thinking there's an echo in that of God's voice to me, loving me as I am, not as I should be, because I never will be what I should be. And the grace that he offers us in our relationships with other people that are patient and present and profound in our lives, not because they say anything particularly profound, but because they're willing to be present, just to be here now. So that's all I've got for you tonight. I do have a really big announcement. Don't take my mutedness has anything to do with the level of excitement I have, but a few reminders that I always do at the end of the podcast. Of course, you can subscribe on the website and on Instagram to follow all that happens. There's going to be a lot of things happening here in the near future, I would hope at least. But you can follow us on Instagram at the Psych Monologues, and Facebook at ray.mitch, and LinkedIn at drmitch. All of those places are places to follow for updates and a variety of content that hopefully will be coming your way. Even on YouTube, I think I know for sure that my podcast is also published up there as well. So the whole archive of them are up on YouTube for you to listen to if you're interested in that. But I've got a really, really exciting announcement that I want to make you all aware of. So one last thing, and then I'll tell you what that is. We're available on Spotify and Stitcher and all the resources that you can find where you find any of the podcasts you listen to. You can find us there as well. And the blog posts will be forthcoming on the website, and we'll start doing more of that. But the big announcement is this, and I, like I said, I want to get this in front of you to make you aware, because we've been doing these silent retreats. I've been doing these silent retreats for 12 years, and a variety of students have marched their way through the experience and have met God in profound and very real ways. But if you're the announcement is this, is that there is a newly formed and newly incorporated organization committed to providing resources and retreats and training for next-gen Christians. And it's called Stained Glass International, or SGI is what I'm calling it. It's been in the back of my mind for quite some time, because I spent a lot of time talking and teaching about the stained glass self and how we need to find ways to become more pure glass people instead of stained glass people. And SGI is more or less the embodiment of that message that has been a part of my teaching for the last 10 years at least. And so now it is officially incorporated, and now it is also in the process of getting our 501(c) designation that allows us to provide tax-deductible donations, for us to accept tax-deductible donations. And since we are in the application phase, what that means is that we can actually start accepting donations right away and provide with the receipts and everything else for your taxes at the end of the year. But we would qualify to offer that to you if you would so choose to partner with us to put on these retreats, not for enrolled CCU students, because right now we've partnered with CCU to provide these retreats for students that are currently enrolled, and CCU has been very generous about funding those for our enrolled students. But we've got a fair amount of alumni and other students that are interested in engaging a silent retreat and seeing what that's like, and that's what Stained Glass International, one of Stained Glass International's ministries, is really devoted to doing. And so it's one of the resources that we will be providing. So SGI has major ministry initiatives that it is trying to get off the ground. The first one is the podcast, and of course this is called the Psych Monologues. It's been around for 2 years now, and it continues to plug along at this being our 111th episode. And the silent retreats and the scholarship fund to allow students to participate in it that may not be going to CCU, or other people that need some help to fill in the gap for them to be able to participate in a silent retreat. And another part of that ministry is training and speaking opportunities to disseminate and help people know what grace looks like in their lives and how to become the people that are accessible to each other in what I have referred to in the past as a pretty dangerous community, dangerous in terms of threatening our inauthenticities and our stained glass that we like to hide behind. My hope is eventually to have a media platform that would include blogs and media and other podcasts that are really within the scope of our mission to reach and connect with next gen, what I'm calling questioners, doubters, and followers. The people that are following Jesus but really don't like Christians very much. And those that question whether or not Jesus has anything for them at all, given the stereotypical views they often have, and those that actually doubt, which is really the ground from which faith springs. So I don't have a address for you to send a check to just yet. I'm working on that to try to put together a P.O. box that you can send it to. And so you'll have to stay tuned for an address for you to be able to send a check if that's what you prefer. For now, on the website, all the links have been changed to reflect the new ministry that is accepting donations, and that is Stained Glass International. So it's exciting news. It has been a long haul in trying to put this thing together in the face of, for me at least, because I'm the driver, founder, president, janitor, everything in between, to have this become a reality. And I am in the midst of all the grief that I'm experiencing. So the fact that we're here and that it's formulated and formed and we can start accepting donations, please be sure that if you're so inclined to partner with us in this way, I would be ever so grateful, and so would any of the students that go to the silent retreats that need the financial help, or to fund any of the other ministries that will grow out of this platform specifically for the next gen Christians, the people that are following Jesus and need support and need encouragement and sometimes can't find a church that they really feel like they belong in, and things like that are, there's many opportunities here. It's just trying to find the avenues in which to address it and reach into it and start maybe a bigger dialogue around that. So if you're interested right now, the website is what it's always been at drmitsch.com. There will probably be changes there as well to reflect the umbrella ministry of Stained Glass International. But until such time, check us out at drmitsch.com and all the resources that are there, a lot of my old lectures and other resources that have been a part of the various ministries and things that I've done over the years that hopefully you'll find encouraging. So, well, I think that's it for tonight. I thank you for taking time out of your day to listen and hang with me in the face of being hijacked by a variety of emotions along the way. But like I said, I think it's a profound moment of reality rather than a profound moment to hide. And that's what I want to make this podcast about, is living life in real time and living life with Jesus in real time. And I again, it's just one of these things that I know people have varying opinions about pets, and that's fine, whatever that is. But it was farewell to Koda, and as I said, he's no longer absent, but he lives on in our hearts, and that's you. If you've ever had to put a pet down and to have one die, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And like I said, I think that's one of those good gifts that are part of a larger chorus of God's voice that says, I love you as you are, not as you should be. And trust me on that, and we can walk together and find life together, and you can find life with others as well. And that's the invitation of even Stained Glass International as well. So thanks for joining me. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to listen to some of these thoughts that are a part of anybody's really spiritual journey, anyone's spiritual journey. And I pray for y'all to have a great week. And I will be back behind the mic next week and have something else to talk about. Hopefully it will be as encouraging or maybe as sobering, but also real, that you can use throughout your week. So thanks again for joining me. As always, love ya. Later. Bye.